Titus, we have to accept that the majority of white people and also Afrikaner people have not changed. The reality is that they still hold on to those old ideals of apartheid. They still want to continue to think of themselves as a superior race. The reality is that they still hold on to the land. Behind you, there's a poster that says, white people own 72% of the land. That is a reality. And I'm very clear that the land must be returned to the people. It also means that those who have taken the land from the rightful owners, from the indigenous people in this country, have to return the land. Now, that doesn't go down very well with some of these Afrikaner farmers.
Welcome guys to another episode of the WSXM podcast where United Africa is an undisputed Africa. So there's you have this former ANC top players, one of those big guys who was writing speeches and who was friends with all the ANC presidents from Nelson Mandela come up to President Tububu after, and then Ramaphosa and all the other presidents of South Africa and the ministers and those guys who have power back then after the ANC become the leading party in South Africa. When he now joins the EFF party, he's a white guy, to be clear, forget his name, and he did an interview and he's telling all what happened when these ANC powerhouse people who have the reins, or the manipulation, the corruption, the using of citizens, and why the ANC party was so powerful and why they are now falling apart, and how they used to change speeches, even for Mandela. So let's take a listen to this interview. It's very informative. Listen to it in its entirety. It's like an hour long, but it's very informative. That's why I'm so interested in playing this for you guys. And let me know what you think about it in the comment section as well. But listen to it, and you're gonna get all the rundown of who did what, when, time, place, and all that. So we'll know why South Africa is in the decline it's in economically right now, presently. So let me know what I think about it in the comment section. As I said, I won't interrupt the video, but watch it till it ends. Boom.
But you know what? Tough luck for them. They have to face the reality of the new South Africa. The land must be returned to the original owners, and the land must be there for the wealth and the empowerment of the people. Let me give you an example. If you come and steal my car, and I find out there's Titus's home, that is where my car is parked.
Yes.
Well, I go there with my wallet and come to you and say, Titus, can I pay you for my stolen car? That's nonsensical.
Absolutely no.
But unfortunately, that is what the ANC negotiated at Kudesa, because we went and enshrined in the Constitution, Section 25. We went and enshrined property rights in the Constitution, which gives property rights to the white community who are the benefactors of the colonial stealing of the land. Now we say if we want land, the land must be paid for. Isn't it the same as you've stolen my car, but if you want my car to come back to me, I must pay you. That's absolute nonsense. So if the white community doesn't like the reality that they're benefactors of colonial thievery, and that the land must be returned to the rightful owners, then it is hard luck for them. I hope that we can convince the Afrikaner and white community to understand that reality, to participate in the return of the land to the rightful owners, and for them to be a part of South African society. But we cannot sugarcoat the reality that the land must return to the people.
Why do you think the right-wingers are so against expropriation of land without compensation?
They like to have the land that they've stolen. Because land is the foundation of economic empowerment and wealth. At the absolute foundation of the disempowerment of the people of this country, the majority of black, especially African people in this country, was the loss of the land. What happened with the loss of the land meant that the African people in this country lost economic power. And the only way economic power will be regained, is the return of the land. That's why central also to the 7 cardinal pillars of the EFF is the return of the land to the people, because it is the cornerstone of economic empowerment. And that is why when the Commander-in-Chief speaks so strongly about the return of the land, he's correct. Without the return of the land to the people, without land restitution, there is no economic empowerment, and there is no correct restitution away from the consequences of the old colonial exploitation and the thievery of the wealth of the people of this country by white colonists.
And of course, you have been a member of the ANC, I'm not sure for how long, but the ANC...
43 years.
43 years. The ANC...
Actually, too long.
Too long.
You know, I see here on this beautiful poster that you have this photo of the 10th anniversary march in Soweto. I see there's also Advocate Dali Mpofu.
Yes.
Now, Advocate Mpofu in 1983 was an article clerk at a law firm that represented me when I was charged with high treason before I was sentenced to 15 years of imprisonment because of my membership of the ANC, of Umkhonto we Sizwe, my participation in the liberation struggle. When Advocate Mpofu decided to leave the ANC, we laughed the other day about it when I joined the Economic Freedom Fighters. I sent him a message, "Are you crazy?" And he quite correctly reminded me, he said, "No, I had sanity more 10 years before sanity came to you." And I give him the credit that he saw what the ANC had become before I had seen it. And I stayed, that's why I say 43 years, but many years too long, because I should have seen what was going on in the ANC. I should have seen how the ANC was selling out earlier. I should have left the ANC earlier. But eventually, at least finally, I left the ANC.
For 30 years, more than 30 years now, the ANC has failed to return the land to the people of South Africa. And there are many failures that we can point to. What do you think has, in fact, led or has, made the ANC fail to return the land to its people? What are some of the contributing factors to the ANC's failures on the land question?
Titus, it's not just the land. It's also no free quality education, no proper health care.
Of course,
no decent housing. All of those promises that the ANC used to make. You know, the ANC was formed on the 8th of January 1912, and at the essence of its formation was the issue of land. But as the years went on, the ANC became also an organization that imbued in its existence an understanding of radical economic transformation. Also because of the role of the then South African Communist Party and the trade union movement. If you look at the strategy and tactics documents of the ANC in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, it talks very eloquently about economic transformation. It talks about the return of the land. About nationalization of the commanding heights of the economy, of the mines and all the big industries.
Yes.
It does all of that. And I believe at that point, the African National Congress was still a revolutionary organization. But the ANC got infiltrated.
Okay.
And that infiltration started already during the exile years. Because there was a plan by the big white monopoly capitalist companies in this country, also together with international imperialism, to infiltrate the ANC. To also make some of the leaders of the ANC dependent on the funding and the finances that they were giving them. And they were starting to buy over people. Also, the intelligence services infiltrated the ANC, the CIA, MI6, MI7 from the British side, and many other Western intelligence agencies.
Yeah. And sorry.
Now, I just want to emphasize this because
sure.
already in the mid-1980s, when the ANC met with the big captains of industry
Oh, yes.
from South Africa in Lusaka,
Yes.
if you listen to an interview that Comrade Ronnie Casuals gave many years later, he says, I was absolutely shocked and surprised by how quickly the leadership of the ANC went belly up and agreed with those captains of white monopoly capitalist big industry that the economy should not change, that there should not be a transfer of the land and of the big means of production into the hands of the people. So then already the ANC had been infiltrated.
Okay.
But the worst thing that happened to the ANC was during the negotiating process, during CODESA,
Yes.
when obviously people like Cyril Ramaphosa, Pravin Gordhan, and others had already been made agents of white monopoly capitalism. But they were still appearing there as those who were working for the people, so to speak. They were still there as so-called members of the African National Congress. And they accepted a constitution that was going to make it totally, utterly impossible for us to return the land to the people and to change the economic dynamics in this country. Then, of course, you also had sellouts such as Tito Mboweni,
Okay.
who was an economic advisor coming from a high-profile university in the United Kingdom and being taught everything about new liberal economic policies, And he then worked himself into the office of President Mandela to become his chief economic advisor. In 1991, Madiba went to the first World Economic Forum that he attended in Davos, January 1991. And what happened? Madiba had a speech that was given to him by the economic desk of the ANC, which said, we're continuing with a policy of nationalization of the land, nationalization of the mines, the big industries, etc. Tito took that speech sitting in his hotel room in Davos and scratched those paragraphs out, rewrote the speech all on his own for Madiba. The next thing, all of us who participated in writing that speech, and I was one of those
So
who
Tito Mboweni
participated to write that speech.
Yeah.
Sorry, you wanted to ask me?
Yeah, so Tito Mboweni is an enabler or was an enabler of white monopoly
Oh,
capital.
absolutely. Tito has always been. Tito was clearly a sellout right from the beginning. And I challenge him to come and tell me that he was not. But I was telling you this story. So he changed that speech. So there all of us are sitting. We're listening to Madiba speaking at the World Economic Forum. And suddenly we hear that we are no longer going to nationalize the commanding heights of the economy. The land will be protected through property rights, etc. And we said, what the hell is going on? There's no decision taken in the National Executive Committee of the ANC to change our economic policy. But the reality was at that stage, Madiba couldn't be contradicted. His power, his authority in the ANC was such that it was very difficult once he had spoken to turn it around.
So
Titu boasted afterwards, and this sticks in my throat. Many years later, he was at a conference at the Hyatt in Rosebank, together with all his chums in Goldman Sachs and Old Mutual, Trevor Manuel, Maria Ramos, that whole clique.
Yeah.
And he was boasting, he said, I trashed the ANC's nationalization program in a garbage bin in a hotel in Davao. And he laughed.
So when former president, the late Nelson Mandela, was reading the speech, couldn't you see that this speech has been changed?
I don't know. I can just tell you what happened. I can tell you what Madiba did. I am not going to go beyond the facts. The facts are very clear because I was part of the team of people who wrote the speech for Madiba, that the speech was totally changed. But it set in motion a process of the introduction of new liberal economic policies in the ANC, which was pushed even harder by President Thabo Mbeki after he came into the presidency following Madiba's retirement. And that new liberal economic policy program has been sustained throughout in the ANC, and under Cyril Ramaphosa now, it is on steroids. It's worse. Now we are being totally sold out. The only time that there was a bit of a holding back, a bit of reversing from this new liberal economic policy program was during the time of President Jacob Zuma.
Okay.
But President Zuma also never really managed to totally change that policy program. He just managed to put the brakes onto it. But I understand that he was under a lot of pressure and that there was a lot of reaction by the white monopoly capitalists against him when he came into power because he was never part of their plan. They never wanted him to become president.
Okay.
Another thing that I believe very strongly, Titus, is that it was no coincidence that Comrade Chris Hani was assassinated.
Is it?
Comrade Chris was one of the most popular leaders in this country. And he was one of those who saw what was happening at CODESA. And he was criticizing what was happening there in very clear terms. I remember a week before he was assassinated, I shared a stage with him in Boksburg.
Yes.
Where he said, CODESA is going to be the death of the liberation struggle. It's going to destroy the ANC. The compromises that are being made, the compromises on land, the compromises also on the so-called sunset clauses, the way in which civil servants from the white community are being guaranteed their jobs until they will retire, will make it impossible for us to be able to change this country and give to our people what we've promised them. And I'm convinced that there were not just a little right-wing clique, Clive Derby-Lewis and Janusz Walusz. No. I'm convinced that there were also senior members of the African National Congress who were part of these sellouts, who had already become part of these people who were now in the service of white monopoly capitalism, who saw that Chris was a real danger to them because his popularity was unsurpassed. The likelihood that after Madiba retired, that Chris could have taken over as president was huge. And the white monopoly capitalists and imperialists said, never in our lives, because this man has not bought into the new liberal sell-out policy program that we have introduced, that we have infiltrated into the African National Congress. He has to be removed. And that is the reason why Comrade Chris was assassinated.
So
and I believe, I must say, make this point, I believe that it is critical. And I hope that when the economic freedom fighters finally become the government of this country, that we will return to investigate properly what happened with the assassination of Chris Hani and how and who were involved also from the side of the ANC. Those files mustn't be closed. It is part of our liberation history, and we owe it to the legacy of Comrade Chris to come out with the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Indeed, we should get to the bottom of this.
Now, absolutely.
You painted a picture of how the ANC has been infiltrated by white monopoly capital. Obviously, you pointed out the fact that they are enablers of white monopoly capital, also citing senior ANC leaders. Would you say Nelson Mandela was one of the people who enabled white monopoly capital?
It's a difficult question because Madiba came at the latter part of his life into a very complex environment where he needed to rely on good comrades to help him to take decisions. I don't think Madiba intentionally sold out. But I think part of the actions that he took, also on the basis of advice that was given to him, led to a sellout process being put into progress. So in that sense, one has to acknowledge that part of the selling out happened during the first administration after the 1994, the 27th of April 1994 elections. And Madiba cannot be separated from that. But what I do believe is Madiba wanted to give us the first step towards our democracy. We had a responsibility to take it further. We had a responsibility to now implement radical economic transformation programs to give us that economic freedom in our lifetime. But we never did so. In fact, instead, we did nothing to change those dynamics that were first embedded in this new liberal constitution. One of the people I blame for that is Thabo Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki was the president of the ANC with the largest majority in parliament. He was the president who had a 2/3 majority. He did nothing, dololo, with that majority. It was wasted. He could have changed the constitution because he had the 2/3 majority, the power to do so. He could have removed Section 25 of the constitution. He could have returned the land to the people. He could have nationalized the South African Reserve Bank. He could have taken that clause in the constitution that gives the Reserve Bank this very, very narrow definition that it is only supposed to concentrate on inflation targeting and it mustn't get involved in economic policy and economic growth programs. All of those things that our fellow fighter, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, in her report, the SAIEX report, and about ABSA and what happened with Bancorp, she wrote in that report also that the South African Reserve Bank's mandate should change. Now, Thabo Mbeki knew that it had to change if he really wanted to bring liberation and economic empowerment to the people.
But those recommendations,
he had the power.
The recommendations in the report never saw the light of day.
But remember, this was now later that she made that report, after Mbeki was already away. But remember that the main reason why Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane became such a target of the ANC and of the establishment and also of the Democratic Alliance was because of that report of hers. Because that went right to the core of what needs to change in our society if we want to bring fundamental change. And after she had published that report, brought that report out as public protector, her fate was sealed. Then they had to remove her. They didn't care how they did it. They didn't care how wrong the process was, because the whole impeachment process was a farcical process. But they had to remove her because she had put the finger on the real sore spot. And that is that economic entrenchment of inequality and of exploitation as it is set there in the Constitution and as it is set in the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank.
The ANC senior leaders that you mentioned or pointed out, do you think they acted wittingly or unwittingly on the events which led to the assassination of Chris Hani? Do you think they knew about the repercussions of their actions, what it would lead to? And do you think they could have done something to avert the assassination of Chris Hani?
Let me start with the last part of your question. I believe that there were some of them involved. So obviously, having stated that, I believe they could have prevented it. You ask me about actions that are wittingly or unwittingly carried out. These are not stupid people. These are people who have been in the liberation struggle for years. They knew what they were doing. When I talk about infiltration, and I talk about how people were bought, it doesn't mean that it takes their intellectual and revolutionary faculties away from them. It doesn't mean that they have now suddenly just become pawns in the hands of some big white monopoly capitalist and imperialist manipulators. They're not just puppets on a string. They made choices. And they made the wrong choices. They became people who cared only about themselves, their own pockets, their own self-empowerment, their own wealth. They stopped caring about the people. And they cannot escape the responsibility of their actions. So we must never, when we talk about infiltration, when we talk about how white monopoly capitalism planned to subvert the African National Congress, we must never take the responsibility for the selling out away from the sellouts. They must take responsibility for what they've done, because they had a choice. They could have done better. They could have said no. But they said yes because they liked the money, they liked the wealth, they liked living in luxury, and at the same time, they betrayed the majority of people in this country. In fact, they doomed the majority of its people in this country to further poverty, greater unemployment, to the kind of disasters that we saw at Marikana. Cyril Ramaphosa cannot be said, oh, well, you know, he cannot be held responsible for what happened at Marikana. You know, he liked the money that he got from that position that he had there as the chair of the company that controlled things, etc. No. Responsibility must be laid firmly and squarely at the door of that man. He, not anyone else, he wrote the concomitant email. And that email led to the action that led to the death of all the
action.
Concomitant action email. Ne? He wrote it, not anyone else. I don't think someone sat there and took his finger and typed it. So he has to be consciously kept responsible. But I want to make another point. Because we tend to concentrate simply just on the leadership at the top level of the African National Congress. The sad thing is that I've learned over many years, and I said to you, I stayed even longer than I should have. Advocate Mpofu saw earlier than me. But I learned over many years and very hard efforts for myself to try and change the ANC internally.
Yes.
That the ANC is beyond redemption. It is not just rotten at the top, not just Cyril Ramaphosa and a few of his acolytes. The whole organization, from top to bottom, is infiltrated, rotten, corrupt. It cannot be saved. And I came to that conclusion after I tried my level best to change it. And my view today is that it is a waste of time and energy to try and save the ANC. It is gone. In Afrikaans, we have a word, we call it kaput. It is finished. It is finished and klar. It is a rotten corpse. Any effort to try and save the ANC is the wrong application of one's energy. It diverts us from the real job, the real task that we have, and that is to bring economic freedom in our lifetime. And that economic freedom will not come through the ANC. It will have to come through a party such as the Economic Freedom Fighters. And the empowerment of the EFF and the progressive left in general is what our job is, not to save the ANC. The ANC is beyond any saving.
So, Comrade Carl, you are speaking so loud and nice about the politics of the left, and obviously now you are with the EFF. You have joined the Economic Emancipation Movement, which is, of course, a radical and a militant organization. What made you join the EFF after such a long time being with the ANC?
As I said to you, last year I decided the ANC is beyond redemption. Go and read my resignation letter. I say the ANC is finished, it's dead, I move on. And then I created, together with a couple of other comrades, the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance. Now, right from the beginning, Areta said our purpose is not just to exist for the sake of our own existence. Our purpose is to advance a radical economic transformation in this country. And our purpose is to work for unity amongst the progressive left. Because we believe very strongly that it is only in our unity as the left that we will be able to get rid of this sellout ANC government. So for 10 months, Areta had been doing that work. And for me, the most important part of the job that I was doing was to engage with other political parties on the left. To say, let's work for unity. Let's make sure that we have a minimum program of action for economic freedom, for radical economic transformation. And 3 months ago, I came to a meeting with the other presidents of left progressive political parties, sitting around the table. And I said, guys, I want to, unfortunately, guys, there were no women there. Also, it says something about what is wrong amongst us, that there are no women presidents in those parties. But that's not the main point I want to make now. I said, can you tell me, do you all agree that the land must return to the people? They said, yes. I said, do you all agree that the South African Reserve Bank must be nationalized, that we must stop the privatization of state-owned enterprises, they all must be under state control, that we need to have a state bank? They said, yes, we all agree. I said, so why are there so many of us around this table? How do we justify this kind of fracturing of the progressive left? I said, it's not about ideology, because you all tell me that you believe in the same thing. So it's about your egos. You like being called presidents. You like to see your faces on the posters on lampposts.
Positions.
It's all about positions. It's not about the people. And I left that meeting convinced that I cannot justify having said that in that meeting. For Areta simply to continue to exist yet as another small left party amongst this myriad of left parties. I said, we must unite. We must make the ballot paper shorter, not longer. We must have one flag, one logo on the ballot paper that clearly represents the radical, progressive future of our country. So I went to the National Working Board of Areta. We called it a National Working Board because we believed that we were busy with work in progress.
Sure.
I said, please, tell me where we must go. Because we cannot justify our independent existence and adding to the divisions in the left. At that point already I had made up my mind, I'm going to the EFF. But I wanted them to go and investigate for themselves.
Okay.
I said, within 2 weeks, come back, tell me. They came back after 2 weeks, the whole board, and they said unanimously, the EFF. So I said, okay, why? I said, no, we've taken Areta's 10-point plan, we've taken the 7 cardinal pillars of the EFF, and there's no difference. And it makes no sense for us as a small party to try and continue to exist on our own. While there's a strong, progressive party led by young, strong leaders with great organizational ability that we can join. I said, fantastic. Now let us go through the process of joining the EFF. So it took us about 2 months to consult, to engage with our various structures, to explain our reasons. Then I was called by President Zuma.
Okay.
And President Zuma said to me, look, I'm going to launch or announce the launch of the MK Party.
Okay.
And that I will support the MK Party and that I will vote for the MK Party. And he said, are you joining? I said, Baba, I've got a few questions. First of all, what is your purpose for the launch of the MK Party and your support for the MK Party? He said, to save the ANC. I
How?
said, but Baba, how? He said, no, there's nothing wrong with the whole African National Congress. It is just Cyril and a few of the top leaders that have gone wrong. I said, Baba, with all respect, and you know that I respect you and that I've supported you for many, many years, and I truly have. I've been, I think, the only one in South Africa who attended every single one of President Zuma's court cases over the last 23 and a half years.
It's you. And part of the reason why you were expelled from the ANC is
I was
because of him.
expelled because
You were
I was
him.
supporting and defending and protecting President Zuma. Because I said that our judiciary are captured in the context of the very wrong decision that the Constitutional Court took when they sentenced President Zuma to 15 months of imprisonment. I said, Baba, with all respect, the ANC can't be saved. And any effort to try and save the ANC is misdirected energy. And we shouldn't misdirect our energy. I said, secondly, Baba, I don't think we must create more political parties. In fact, we must reduce the number. Now, to create another party in the form of the MK Party is not helpful in terms of this divisions and diversity within the progressive left. I said, Baba, in honesty, I hear you, I respect you, I've always supported you. But my mind is made up, and the mind of my National Working Board of Areta is made up, that the only real proper progressive thing that we can do today is to join the economic freedom fighters. Also because we believe that young leadership must be empowered. And the EFF is a party of the youth. It has got strong young leaders in the Commander-in-Chief, Comrade Julius Malema, in the Deputy President, Comrade Floyd Shivambu, and other young leaders. I said, Baba, I love you, but with all respect, you're 81.
Yeah, it's old.
Now, I'm not trying to undermine President Zuma on the basis of age. But even myself, I'm sitting here, I'm 64. For a little while, for 10 months, I called myself the president, or I was called by my supporters the president of Areta. But that was unimportant. That's not what it's about when you're a revolutionary. It's about the struggle, not about a title. And I, as an older person, must admit that we have made mistakes. Although I fought against the selling out process in the African National Congress, although I sometimes stood like my finger alone outside Nasrec and other meetings of the National Executive of the ANC calling for Ramaphosa and others to go, I must also acknowledge that I've been part of the mistakes in the ANC.
Sure.
And I cannot come and claim leadership to the future. What I can do now is to be there to assist, to support the empowerment of young, strong leaders. And those I find in the economic freedom fighters.
Yes.
So at the end of all of that discussion with President Zuma, I said, Baba, I'm making a very clear, deliberate, unequivocal decision. I'm not going to join the MK party. I've made up my mind, I'm joining the economic freedom fighters.
And
because
what did
the EFF is the future. And I want to be part of the future.
Yeah.
I want to see economic freedom in our lifetime, not in a different lifetime. And I don't want any confusion about what I stand for. I also don't want to be part of a faction in the ANC. Because I fear that there are still some who today join the MK party who don't give up their membership of the ANC because they continue to see the possibility of dual membership. Because at the essence, at the heart of what they're doing is to save the ANC. But the problem is when you want to save the ANC, you're going to try and contain and help and assist all the flotsam, all the rubbish will continue to come along with you.
But the question now is, how do you save the ANC with another political party? Because ANC is a political party.
Can't be
MK is a political party.
Is a political party, but MK is also at the same time an expression of a faction of the ANC.
Is it the RET?
I beg your pardon?
Would you say it's the RET
I don't
forces?
know. It may contain
MK?
part of the RET, but what I see from MK is that it still has as its mission to save the ANC. And as the Commander-in-Chief said in his press conference on Friday, that is an impossible duty. It's a task that one shouldn't take on yourself because it's a waste of time. We must direct our efforts to the future, to fundamental, radical economic transformation. And that is what the EFF stands for. And what I love about the EFF is the EFF does what it says
it will do.
It will do. The EFF doesn't go around making empty promises. When it says we're going to do that, it does it. When the EFF enters into a coalition in significant municipalities and in government, its representatives in that coalition does the work. Go and see what has happened in eThekwini. This year, the swimming pools were open. The beaches were clean. That was the role of representatives of the EFF in eThekwini. Go and see what members of the EFF in the mayoral committee is doing here in the metro in Johannesburg, in Ekurhuleni. They do what they promise to do. The other thing I love about the Commander-in-Chief is consequential management. You either work or you're gone. You either deliver or you leave. Simple. And in South Africa, we've seen a situation where people have impunity. They make promises, they don't fulfill the promises. There's no service delivery, there's no consequence for the lack of service delivery. People keep on returning to positions of power despite abject failure and no delivery.
Yeah.
And I love what Comrade Julius Malema, our Commander-in-Chief, does. If you don't work, if you don't deliver, you face the consequences.
If you don't pay for a bus, you're gone.
You face the consequences.
Yeah.
And that is something which shouldn't just be part of the culture of the EFF, as much as I love that culture. It should be part of the future culture of our country, of our government. And that's why I love to see the EFF in power, in government, and Comrade Julius as the president of South Africa, so that the same attitude of consequential management can be implemented. You know, I commented when I walked into this revolutionary house today, Madikizela Mandela House.
The cleanliness.
And I'm looking at everything works. It's clean. It's proper. And I compare it to what I've experienced. I haven't been in the Thule House for the last year, but I'm sure it's worse now. But you know, the dust used to walk with you. The wallpaper was crawling off the walls, coming towards you, peeling off. There's no brooms to be found to clean anywhere. The place is in disgusting filth.
So the ANC,
Now that is no. I want to make this point. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Sure, go ahead.
That is the expression of the internal rot in the ANC. You know, there's an old saying: if you can't do right on the small things, you're never going to do right on the big things. If you cannot keep your house clean, how on God's earth are you going to run a country? If you cannot manage your finances, if you cannot pay your staff, as has happened with the ANC, if you allow yourself to be entered into a financial dilemma where, you know, you're on the verge of being sequestrated, how on God's earth are you going to run the complicated, intricate processes of governance? And we can see it. What happens in the Thule House is the microcosm of what the ANC has been doing to the whole of South Africa. And here in Madikizela Mandela House, I see the exact opposite. So I walked in here and I said, I'm home. This is my home. This is where I want to be. And I see on social media, there are those people who say to me, well, why don't you go to MK Party? We think you should come there. We think the culture of MK Party suits you better. Why? There's no such. I've made a clear, unequivocal, very rational decision to become a fighter in the economic freedom fighters. Let everyone understand me clearly. I knew that President Zuma was going to announce the MK Party. It didn't catch me off guard. He told me exactly what he was going to do in advance. And I told President Zuma exactly what I was going to do and the other members of Areta were going to do in advance. He knew when we called that press conference 2 days before he made his announcement that we were going to announce that we as individual members of Areta are joining the economic freedom fighters.
Yeah.
And I'm here to work. I'm not here to play. I'm here to be available for any job
Yeah. And
the
I've seen-
EFF wants to
Yeah.
give me. I told the commander-in-chief when I met him on Saturday, I'm here to work. I'm at the service of the economic freedom fighters. Tell me what to do. I will do it. And now
Yeah.
we must campaign and fight to make the EFF the largest party that will become the government of South Africa after the 2024 elections, because this 2024 must be our 1994.
Indeed, it is our 1994. And
Absolutely.
I've seen you on the ground already, engaging with fighters, recruiting fighters. And on the question of the MK party formed by former President Jacob Zuma, one would think that given your strong relationship with him, you would have perhaps wanted to work with him closely. But now, given the reasons that you have outlined, are you then saying MK is sort of a replica of the ANC because given what the president of the, I'm not sure if former President Zuma is the president of MK, but given what President Zuma has said about MK, you don't see that objective which seeks to represent the poor and the marginalized?
Look, I'm not here to decampaign President Zuma. And I think it wouldn't be also in the interest of the progressive left in our country to do so. And I do think it was a courageous thing for President Zuma with his history. We know his very strong affinity and his very strong love for the ANC to have made that announcement.
Sure.
That he was not going to vote for the ANC and that he calls on people to vote for the MK party and that he will vote for the MK party. So I'm not here to decampaign him or the MK party.
Of course, yes.
Because I believe still that it should be possible for the various progressive left forces in South Africa to work together, and I include the MK party as part of that. What I'm saying is that I'm concerned about the way in which the MK party comes over as another faction of the ANC rather than an independent party. I'm concerned about this task that President Zuma says he had given himself to save the ANC, because I don't believe the ANC can be saved. I've said that for more than a year now, unequivocally so.
Sure.
And I would be inconsistent if today I was suddenly turning around and saying I'm going to become a part of a project to save the ANC when I said the ANC is dead, because you don't resurrect a corpse. It's dead. I'm not one of those fake pastors who believe that you can resurrect corpses. The ANC is dead. So it is wasted energy and effort.
Yeah.
As the commander-in-chief said, it would have been a great boost to the EFF if President Zuma said he will vote for the EFF. But okay, he decided to go the route of the MK party. With all my reservations about the MK party and the kind of task or duty that it has given itself, and the way in which it still represents itself really as a faction of the ANC, I still hope that all of us will be able to work together. I still hope that in the future we will be able to unite left progressive forces, which will include also the MK party. But I'm strongly of the conviction that the EFF is the political party that should take the lead because it has earned its stripes. I'm strongly of the conviction that my job today is first and foremost to mobilize for the EFF, for the growth of the membership of the EFF, and for the growth of the voting South African public to vote for the economic freedom fighters. I want to see the EFF emerging out of the 2024 elections in all the provinces and nationally as the strongest party and as the party of governance. The people of South Africa deserve an economic liberation in our lifetime. It deserves strong, young, committed, consequential, decisive leadership. And all of that is being provided by the EFF. So I'm in my heart, as I'm translating now directly from an old Dutch saying, in my bone and marrow, in my been and murg. I'm a member of the EFF. I'm a fighter of the EFF. I want to see the EFF as the government of South Africa.
Indeed. In just less than 5 months, we're going into the 7th democratic elections. But now, earlier on, you spoke about the ANC SG Fikile Mbalula while addressing the media. He said, well, look, they acted in defense of...
We've had a serious discussion up to now. Now you want to come and lower the level of the discussion.
Why not? I want to understand. I mean, someone comes out now and say the ANC misled Parliament, misled the public about a swimming pool being, a fire pool. What do you make of such statement? Is it a last kick of a dying horse? What do you make of it?
There's an old saying, those that God want to destroy, he first makes mad. And I listened to that madness by Fikile Mbalula. So what he was by implication telling us is, we're backing President Ramaphosa, we're covering up on Phala Phala. We know that it's wrong, but we're continuing to do it because...
in defense of their president.
We are in defense of this crook, and we will continue to do so, regardless of what we know is wrong. That is what he was really telling us. You see, and that is what we've been saying. The ANC has become a criminal enterprise. It is no longer even a political party. It is a mafia institution, which is only concerned about the sustaining of its own power, of the money that it can steal from the people of this country. And at the head of this organization, as the old saying goes, a fish rots from the head, is the main mafia character, Cyril Ramaphosa, because there is absolutely no way that you can defend what happened at Phala Phala. It was criminal in terms of the amount of money there, in terms of the breaking of the various rules and the regulations around foreign exchange. There's no way you can justify not reporting a so-called crime. There's no way you can justify gender-based violence because a domestic worker, a woman domestic worker, was illegally detained and tortured. You cannot justify what the South African Reserve Bank did. You cannot justify what the South African Revenue Service did. You cannot. And Advocate Busisiwe Ngubane asked 32 questions that exposed the whole rot that was going on there. And in return, she was immediately suspended. And as a thank you for her service to the nation, to try and get the people of South Africa to realize how deep the criminality in our country goes, she was eventually impeached. So that is what Ramaphosa does. He removes people who challenge him. He pays off where he can, and he pays his way into positions. And all of that is the conduct of a don of the mafia. And that is what Cyril Ramaphosa is, a mafia don. He's not a president. He should never have been the leader of this country. He was parachuted, and I must talk about this for just a second. He was parachuted into the leadership of the ANC in 1991 at the then Durban conference, coming from nowhere. No one actually even knew if Cyril Ramaphosa was, at that stage when he walked into that conference, a member of the ANC. I sat 2 chairs away on the stage from Comrade Oliver Reginald Tambo And when Ramaphosa walked into the conference hall, he said, Ubani law. Who's that? Who's that? Nobody. At the end of the conference, suddenly was the Secretary General. Why? Because the white monopoly capitalists came and told Madiba, make Ramaphosa the Secretary General. Irene Menel, Clive Menel, Harry Oppenheimer, those were Cyril Ramaphosa's campaign managers for him to become the Secretary General of the ANC.
Okay.
It was a disaster when he became Secretary General. I worked with that
So
man.
the same modus operandi repeated itself in 2017.
No, it's actually a bigger tragedy because one of my disagreements, my few disagreements that I had with President Zuma was in a disagreement that I had with him in 2012 when Ramaphosa was brought in at the ANC's national conference in Mangaung as the deputy president. And when he was elected, I walked onto the stage. I went up to President Zuma. I said, President, I'm leaving this conference. I'm not even going to wait for your final concluding speech. Because this is the biggest mistake that you've made in your life.
Yes.
I know this man. I worked with him. He's a sellout. He only cares about money. You will regret what you've done today to resuscitate his political life for the rest of your life. And a while ago when I met President Zuma in Kandla, he said to me, you know, you were right. I said, yes, it's sad that I have to say I told you so.
So in fact, would you say Ramaphosa has put hammered a final nail on the ANC coffin with all his shenanigans?
Of course. But he was already busy killing the ANC many years before. He was the central figure in the destruction of our liberation ideals through the CODESA negotiations, him and Pravin Gordhan. And he was brought back to come now and to hammer the final nail into the coffin of the ANC. And we must get rid not just of him, but of that whole ANC. In fact, I think we need a cremation ceremony, not even a funeral. Because even that coffin that the ANC is in, that coffin where you say he hammered the final nail, even that coffin must be cremated. The ANC and everything associated with itself is a disaster for this country now.
Yeah. In less than 5 months, South Africa is going into its seventh provincial and national and provincial elections. What are your expectations?
My hope is that the EFF will emerge as the largest political party in South Africa. I know many people will say to me, but you're crazy to think so and hope so. No. There is a true sea change in this country. We've reached a watershed moment. And all of us in the economic freedom fighters must now work day and night to bring in every day new members, new voters, to work ourselves to a standstill to get as many South Africans who are not yet registered as voters to register, to motivate them to vote, and to motivate them to vote for the economic freedom fighters. I want to see at the end of these elections, an EFF as the largest political party, and I want to be able to go and sit there in that amphitheater at the Union Buildings. And I want to see Comrade Julius,
the Commander-in-Chief,
Malema, the Commander-in-Chief, taking the oath to become the President of South Africa. That is why I'm here. That's what I'm working for. That is what all of us in the EFF must put our shoulders to the wheel non-stop every day. And I'm looking forward to an incredible turnout at Moses Mabhida Stadium.
Of course.
I'm sure we're going to fill the stadium, the overflows and everything else. We're going to show everyone that there is no political no-go zones in South
absolutely.
Africa.
Yeah.
And that the EFF stands strong, unequivocally so, everywhere, and especially also in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah. Now, as we wind up, in the build-up to the election, there have been mushrooming of splinter parties, Rise, Sarah, a lot of them have come up lately. What do you think is these political party motives?
It's all there to undermine our democracy, to prevent the progressive agenda from succeeding. They're being financed, as the Commander-in-Chief said in the press conference, Rise, Mzansi and these parties are financed by foreign economic powers and even foreign countries' governments. The intention is to subvert our democracy, to prevent fundamental economic transformation from happening in South Africa, to confuse the voting public in South Africa. And our message must be an unequivocal one. Don't allow yourself to be attracted by these fly-by-night little parties that are funded by foreign funders. Stick to your guns, literally. Stay with the EFF. Stay with the undertaking that the EFF has made, that there must be economic freedom in our lifetime. Don't allow yourself to be misled by the shenanigans of charlatans. Stay with the real thing. And the real thing in South Africa today
Is the EFF.
is the EFF.
Yeah. Do you think South Africa is ready for a coalition government, given obviously the rise of these political parties? There are a lot of them. I think there are over 600 now on the ballot.
I'm not a great fan of coalition government. I would prefer to see the EFF as the overall victor and the government of this country. But if it doesn't turn out to be like that, what I would like to see is the EFF being the strongest, the largest party, so that if there is a need for coalitions, because of the size of the EFF and the numerical support from the voting public that the EFF has received, that it will be able to dictate the conditions of such a coalition. Because even if we go into coalition, it must be led by a strong, radical, progressive party, black party, which is the EFF. And it must be for the economic empowerment of the people of South Africa, especially the African people.
Comrade Niehaus, no doubt you are a proponent of economic emancipation.
Thank you, man.